Hello, Analytic Geometry and Calculus 1 class. Back again. Last video for this ridiculous semester. Okay, we're going to do definite integrals involving trigonometry. These aren't too shabby if you're okay with the trig. Once again, anytime I'm dealing with trig, I make myself a little cheat thing. So, okay, y and y prime, do this, okay? The derivative of the sine is the cosine. Derivative of cosine is negative sine. Derivatives this way, integrals that way. Okay? Then I'm also going to make a little miniature unit circle. Okay? So this is 0 radians. This is pi over 2 radians. This is pi radians. 3 pi over 2 radians. 2 pi radians. This point is 1 in the x, 0 in the y. This one is 0 in the x, 1 in the y. This point is negative 1 in the x direction, 0 in the y. And this is 0 in the x, negative 1 in the y. My points are given as cosine, sine. Okay? Alright, so let's do this. So the integral of the sine, the integral of negative sine is cosine. So integral of positive sine is negative cosine. So this is negative cosine of x, or probably more than likely be theta since we're dealing in radians, but I always forget that. Whatever. Same thing. Okay. Going from 0 to pi over 2. So that's going to give me negative cosine of pi over 2 minus negative cosine of 0. Okay, so the cosine of pi over 2. You go to pi over 2, cosine is 0. So we have 0 or negative 0. Then I have this minus sign. Then the cosine of 0 is 1, but this is negative cosine of 0, so it's a negative 1. So I have 0, negative and negative is a positive, so the whole thing is 1. Now if I were to graph this, okay, if this is my 0 and say this is pi over 2, okay, the cosine of 0 is 1 up here. The cosine of pi over 2 is 0. Goes like that. Okay, so the area under this curve to the x-axis is worth 1. 1 unit. This is the key. Seriously, this is the key. It's the only way I got through this stuff in college, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so let's do the integral of the cosine of x dx. And let's go from pi over 2 to 2 pi. Okay, so integrating cosine, well, the integral of cosine is sine. So this is just going to be the sine of x going from pi over 2 to 2 pi. Upper bound minus lower bound. So the sine of 2 pi minus the sine of pi over 2. Okay, well, the sine of 2 pi, here's 2 pi, the sine is 0. This is pi over 2, the sine is the y value, so that's 1. So the whole thing is just negative 1. Now if I were to graph the sine from, wait, let me make this better. Alright, so this is 2 pi, I'll get out of the way in a second, 3 pi over 2, and pi over 2. And 1, and negative 1. Okay, so the sine of 2 pi is 0. The sine of pi over 2 is 1. The sine of pi is 0. And the sine of 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. So we go like this, and then like this. Now we saw from the previous problem that a half of this is worth 1. So here's 1 minus 2. Okay, each of those quarter circle things would be worth 1, and since this is below, it's -1. So we have 1 minus 2, that gives us -1. So there's not a whole lot else. I mean, under normal circumstances, I have taken my calculus classes further. And other classes that had more trouble, I did not go much further than this. This is pretty much it. So hopefully you're okay with all of this. Like I said, I'm going to put multiple choice test, and then you can just give me your answers. I hate to do that to you guys, but this is insane trying to grade from a computer screen when I have so many students. So I think this should be okay. If you have any questions, you can call me, you can text me, you can email me. And I love and miss you guys tons. So I hope I see you in the fall.